I am part of a new generation that's not from anywhere, but it's from everywhere. On paper, I was born and brought up in London. But in reality, my family come from all over the place. I love London. But after school, I thought it was time that I actually lived these other cultures, rather than experiencing them in bits and pieces, and at a distance. My father encouraged me to apply to New York University because of its global community. So eventually I did. I was accepted into a program which included 2 years studying in Paris. So at the age of 19, I found myself in Paris, away from home for the first time. I lived in halls of residence and enjoyed the first carefree days of student living. Paris was fun. I did all the things I was meant to do and visited all the sites. I kind of liked Paris, but it was still a novelty. Then, after a few months, I started to feel flat and deflated. That's when my friend Alina stepped in. She offered to rent me a room in her flat, but she didn't just rent me a room. She introduced me to her friends, locals and foreigners alike, but they all had one thing in common. They lived in Paris, and they lived Paris. They took me to places in hidden corners, alleys, and back streets, places without camera-toting tourists. We were focused on the quality of our experience, just like I was with my friends here in London. I gave up ticking boxes of things that I ought to do. We were focused on the enjoyment of now, rather than planning social media updates. Paris was a brilliant backdrop to our interactions as people, not a location with a list of sights to see. And despite my temporary status, I felt like a resident, and my affection for the place soared. I no longer kind of like Paris. I loved it. Changed how I dressed, how I ate, how I drank, and even changed my sleeping patterns. Eileen and her generosity had unlocked Paris for me. I was no longer a tourist. I'd always traveled a lot because my family lived all over the world, but my time in Paris changed my view on travel. Of course I did the tourist things, but I also experienced life in Paris as a resident and a traveler. I got to experience life in Paris as a local, and that made my time so much better. It was like going from 2D black and white to 3D color. You see, travelers are different from tourists. Travelers don't collect souvenirs. Although they may marvel at buildings and architecture, they collect vivid and emotional memories based on what they have done, who they have met, where they've shared a meal, drank together, danced together. Travelers are enriched by the people they meet and get to know. I started writing a guide to Paris based on my new experiences of the city. Trying to unlock Paris for my friends as it had been unlocked for me. I told them where to get the best mojitos and seriously good scrambled eggs, where to see the most amazing street art murals, where to get sushi to live off, and a restaurant in the Marais with a secret smoking room that you have to go through a cupboard to get to. It was the start of a journey to build bridges between people and cultures. I decided to create a platform to share these experiences. Since my time in Paris, I've traveled more and more, meeting inspiring individuals and actively researching and experiencing popular destinations, as well as places that aren't in any guidebook. My work has allowed me to develop a new approach to travel. I guess the rationale behind all my work is to help people to travel consciously rather than to travel as tourists. I want them to have a richer experience when they're abroad, an experience that benefits them as travelers, that gives them an understanding that also benefits the local destination, and a curiosity that releases them from tick box tourism culture. Traveling consciously. Traveling consciously answers 3 main questions. Firstly, why do we travel? Over the past few years, particularly on long plane journeys, I've thought a lot about why people travel and the importance of traveling with a purpose. Many people travel to escape their lives at home. Many people end up enjoying the anticipation of the holiday far more than the holiday itself. Traveling with a purpose will help people to see travel as an expansion of living and a bonus, rather than an escape. Traveling with a purpose also helps define what makes a good holiday. What do you really want to get out of your trip? Do you want to relax? Do you want to detox? Do you want to be mentally stimulated? Or do you want to just have fun? Understanding what makes a good holiday will not only improve your time abroad, but also enhance every aspect of your day-to-day life. Traveling consciously can help us live differently. When we're away, we often find time for things that we don't do at home, like sitting in a cafe or having cocktails at sunset. Why is that? Secondly, where do we travel and where should we travel? Don't live by the guidebook. Maybe visit that remote village or eat at that tiny hole in the wall that locals are raving about. You may think that this is the job of the tourism industry, but sadly this is not the case. Only when enough travelers are curious travelers will tour operators and media begin to listen. Many of us have friends who visit from abroad, and many of those friends will naturally have bucket lists of things they want to do and tick off. We often end up telling them to throw those lists away and taking them instead to our favourite pubs, restaurants, and hangout spots. We should go to places and visit them as if we're visiting a close friend, not just doing the obvious and the superficial and the famous. The experience is better, the cost of travelling is often lower, it's enriching, and far more than a series of selfies. We do that by interacting with people, eating where the locals eat, going more slowly, absorbing more. Thirdly, and finally, how should we travel? Travel considerately. There's a huge social impact to travel that we cannot ignore. It's all too easy to travel within our bubble, ignorant of our surroundings and local customs, subconsciously imposing our own habits and ways of doing things. Whether that's by disregarding dress codes, or by buying a souvenir in the hotel shop rather than directly from local artisans, or by demanding imported foods that we recognise rather than eating what was harvested or reared and produced locally. Travelling considerately will not only enhance our experience away, but also ensure that our travel benefits the local community rather than distorting, corrupting, or destroying it. And if enough of us start asking questions, then the people at the top of the tourism industry will have no choice but to listen. So I guess what I'm suggesting is to travel consciously, which is to travel with a purpose, travel curiously, travel considerately. Thank you.